World of Warcraft Classic was Blizzard's first time dipping their toes into the MMO genre. With tons of new content, spells, talents and abilities to balance, inevitably, some things were more powerful than others. Here are 5 of the most overpowered spells in Classic World of Warcraft. Polymorph. Despite the silly idea of turning someone into a sheep, it is one of the best spells in the game. Polymorph would transform a humanoid or beast into a sheep for 20 seconds. During this time, the affected target is essentially taken out of the game for about half a minute. Dungeon parties would love to bring mages into their group as they are amazingly useful. By bringing a mage, you could pull significantly easier. However, hitting the sheep will take it out of the polymorph state. If you wanted to infuriate your mage, attack the polymorph target. Playing a mage, I would constantly see people do AoE abilities or cleaves to force my sheep out of it. Now, I'm getting off topic, but please don't attack the sheep. Aside from its use in PvE, in PvP it was a lifesaver. Some guys tries to gank you in the open world, just sheep him and mount up. Or if you get into a 2v2 engagement and the mage sheeps you, suddenly it is a 2-on-1 fight as you can do nothing but watch your poor friend get ganked while you are helpless to do anything. The only reliable way to beat Polymorph is to use the PvP trinket, which takes you out of Polymorph, but it has a 5-minute cooldown and takes up one of your valuable trinket slots. So if you were sheeped again, you had no recourse. In general, Polymorph crushed. Other classes had forms of crowd control but required way more of a setup to get them to work. They were not as consistent as Polymorph was. For example, Freezing Trap required you to be out of combat, lay a stationary trap down, and hope the target walks into it. Sap required you to be in stealth and could only be used out of combat and required you to be behind the humanoid. Whereas a mage just had to press one button at a range distance, in or out of combat, and that target will be crowd controlled. As such, mages were the kings of crowd control due to this one spell. Kidney Shot. Something to keep in mind in Classic World of Warcraft, stuns had no diminishing returns, meaning stuns can be spammed over and over and will not diminish in effect, whereas spells like Polymorph have diminishing. Kidney Shot, however, had no such diminishing returns. It was a rogue finishing move that stunned the target for 1 second per combo point, and rogues could generate combo points very easily. It was not uncommon to be cheap shotted by a stealth rogue, then hit with Kidney Shot and die, giving you no opportunity to fight back. Kidney Shot could be spammed ad infinitum and would not diminish in effect. From the first time using it to the 10th time, rogues had insane capabilities of stun locking a player without even letting them have an opportunity to fight back. Very cheap, but fits in with the rogue lore quite well. It's worth mentioning the rogue's vast array of stun locks, disorients and blinds were not by themselves overpowered, but put together, well, it was just broken. How else could a rogue wearing 0 gear and wear the dagger he got at the start of the game beat players in full epics? As a non-rogue, you hated the sound effect of Kidney Shot, as you watched in horror as your character had no chance of defending himself. All in all, it was a great time to be a rogue. Feign Death. It's important to realize in Classic World of Warcraft that maintaining threat was a lot more important than it is today. It is crucial for DPS classes to have add-ons to monitor their threat, as tanks couldn't generate threat the way they can in a modern World of Warcraft. As a DPS class, you could very easily pull a boss if you were doing too much damage, leading to your raid wiping, and of course your GM would get mad. As such, threat reducing abilities were highly sought after and allowed you to realize your true potential as a DPS class. Feign Death was a hunter spell that forces you out of combat, reducing your threat to 0. And best of all, it had a mere 30-second cooldown, unlike the 5-minute cooldown of Rogue's Vanish. It's worth mentioning that Feign Death has saved me from dying many times in the 1 to 60 content. As a monster was about to kill me, I'll just use Feign Death and I could just run away. It gets better though. From using Feign Death, you could eat and drink due to not being in combat, meaning you could drink water and restore your mana to full at any time during a boss fight. As such, a hunter running out of mana did not exist. It wasn't just PvE that saw the use of Feign Death. Feign Death was highly useful in PvP as well. By using Feign Death, you could interrupt spells from being cast against you due to the other player losing target of you. Upon leaving combat, you could use non-combat only spells such as traps and most notably Freezing Trap. A useful PvP spell requiring you to be out of combat that basically stunned your target for about 10 seconds. The message should be clear. Hunters loved their Feign Death. While other classes were worrying about their threat, Hunters were going berserk. Although the DPS chart leaders would later be Rogues and Fury Warriors, Hunters still had a place in their raids due to their incredibly long-ranged attacks and tranquilizing shot that was absolutely necessary to bring. Ignite. It is important to realize throughout most of vanilla World of Warcraft, mages were forced into Frost if they wanted any chance to raid. Raids like Molten Core, Blackcoin Lair all had fire elemental bosses who were resistant to fire damage. In addition, the classic Frostbolt spam mage was strong without being geared well. However, the mechanics of fire required a high level of gear to scale properly. Fire spec relied on spell damage and crit chance to be viable. However, in the late game of classic World of Warcraft, fire mages came into their own element. No longer were we held down by the limitations of fire resistant bosses, as mages who had been forced into spamming Frostbolt now had an entirely different spec to play. Ignite became viable. I truly believe Ignite to be one of the coolest talents in the game. Ignite caused your crits with fire spells to deal an additional 40% of your spell damage to the target. But here's what's interesting. Instead of your fire crits resetting the Ignite, the new crit would add on to the existing Ignite dot. In addition, other mages who are doing crits with fire damage would add on to your Ignite, meaning the longer the fight goes on, the larger and larger your Ignite damage over time increases. In Naxxramas, you would regularly see mages Ignite tick in the thousands, as the lucky mage chosen to have the Ignite would be on top of the damage meters. Ignite is just an amazing spell to maintain. It is a lot of fun to see the damage take increase exponentially. It is just amazing to see the damage just get compounded by each time you crit with your fire spells, and you start to see thousands ticking. It is a lot of fun to see that. Reckoning. And the way Reckoning worked was that every time you were a victim of a critical strike, you would gain the ability to strike another time on your next swing. However, this ability could stack as many times as you want. So people came up with a very clever solution on how to use this ability to actually take down bosses. So if you were dedicated enough, you could actually sit your character down, have your friend attack you, and this would be a guaranteed critical strike. As in classic World of Warcraft, if you were attacked while sitting down, it would be a guaranteed critical strike. So you kept sitting down and your friend kept hitting you, you would gain more and more stacks of Reckoning, to the point where you could get as many stacks as you want and you could actually one-shot anything you wanted. It got to the point where a character actually gained 1,800 plus stacks of Reckoning from his friend critical striking him over and over again. So people had the bright idea to do this, and they actually targeted Doomlord Kazakh once again. They went up to him and one-shotted him with the Reckoning bomb. And this was the only time there's ever been a one-shot of a boss, aside from broken GM items. Immediately after this happened, Blizzard hotfixed the bug. However, it is not known as to whether or not the man that did the Reckoning bomb actually got banned, because he technically didn't exploit any glitch. This was simply part of the game, and you could actually justify it being a clever use of game mechanics. I mean, just look at this. While those were some of the most overpowered spells and talents and abilities in classic World of Warcraft. Now, I've been making videos on my channel for a short amount of time, but I've gotten so much growth on this channel, it is pretty crazy. I made a video called 5 most overpowered items in classic World of Warcraft, and it's already at 118,000 views. It seems like every day I log into my YouTube account, I just see more and more views. So it is just crazy how this channel is growing. So I'm very thankful for what is happening. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, please like down below and subscribe to the channel for more. This is vaulty signing out.